This video has been brought to you by ESPN+. Watch this weekend's fights for free by signing up for your 7-day free trial using the link in the description below. Mental and physical toughness is a huge part of being an MMA fighter. It allows the fighter to push hard when the fight gets tough. The ability to take a punch determines where the fight will go. Some fighters aren't able to take an impact of a clean punch, where the body is forced to shut down, but there are other fighters who are able to withstand the damage and are known to have strong chins, where they will keep pushing forward no matter what happens in their fights. So for this video, I'll be talking about the 10 Granite chins in the UFC 2019. Number 10. Jon Lineker. Jon Lineker has been a top contender in the bantamweight division for many years. He has a reputation for having a granite chin and his heavy hands. He always pushes forward in his fights and throws everything into his punches to inflict as much damage as possible. A good example of this is when he faced Michael McDonald at UFC Final 91. In the fight, he was able to drop Michael McDonald with a vicious left hook and followed up with punches to get the KO victory. In his fights, he's willing to get hurt to implement his game plan, which is to finish his opponent ASAP. A good example of this is when he faced Francisco Rivera at UFC 191. In the fight, both fighters got into a brawl near the end of the first round, where Francisco Rivera hit Jon Lineker many times in the brawl with some heavy shots, but Jon Lineker remained calm and threw some big shots of his own, eventually forcing Francisco Rivera to go for the takedown. He was quickly able to sink in a guillotine choke to get his hand raised. Even in his fight with former champion TJ Dillashaw at UFC 207, he took some very heavy punches, but still pushed forward no matter what. Jon Lineker is known for his ability to take a solid punch, and he's always willing to risk himself getting hurt in his fights. Number 9. Carlos Condit. Carlos Condit is the former UFC interim welterweight champion who always puts on an entertaining show for the fans whenever he competes. It is always a treat to watch him fight, as he always gives it his all to entertain the fans, even getting bloodied up. He's primarily a striker where he has used his devastating Muay Thai skills to pull off the most spectacular finishes in the UFC. A good example of this is when he faced Dan Hardy at UFC 120. In the fight, he threw a number of unorthodox strikes where he eventually caught him with a vicious left hook, dropping him to the canvas. He followed up with punches to get the knockout victory. He showed his true toughness when he faced Robbie Lawler at UFC 195. In the fight, Carlos Condit hit him with everything he had and was also hit with some damaging shots from Robbie Lawler, which almost had him finished many times during the 5-round war. Even though he lost the fight, he showed his toughness and showed that he was determined to win. Even though he hasn't won a fight in a very long time, he has demonstrated many times that he has the ability to withstand a heavy punch and definitely has one of the best chins in the UFC today. He has lost only one fight by TKO and still remains one of the most durable fighters in the sport. Number 8. Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis is a former UFC lightweight champion who is known for his flashy fighting style, where his unpredictability has helped him gain some of the best finishes in the UFC. In his fights, we've seen him pull off crazy finishes out of nowhere in a fight he may be losing. A good example of this is when he faced Michael Chiesa at UFC 226. In the fight, we saw Anthony Pettis get taken down in the first round. He wasn't able to get any offense going. In the second round, he was able to drop Michael Chiesa with a stiff right hand and sunk in a guillotine choke. When Michael Chiesa was able to escape, he quickly transitioned to a triangle armbar to get the tap. Over the years, Anthony Pettis has suffered many ups and downs, where he hasn't been able to get a winning streak going. He has shown that through the toughness he has faced will only make him come back stronger. This was seen in his most recent fight against Stephen Thompson at UFC Final 148. In the fight, Stephen Thompson hit Anthony Pettis with everything he had, from jabbing his face to spinning wheel kicks. By the end of the first round, Anthony Pettis looked like a bloody mess. In the second round, Anthony Pettis was able to fly through the air and land a heavy right hand, sending Stephen Thompson flat to the canvas. He followed up with punches to get the finish. Anthony Pettis showed true toughness in that fight and showed that he has the ability to take some very big shots without being put away. He has shown true heart in many of his fights and has proved that he has the ability to handle heavy punches, proving that he has one of the best chins in the UFC today. Number 7. Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens is known to be one of the heaviest hitters in the featherweight division, where his one-punch knockout power has helped him pick up some big wins in the UFC. In his fights, he pushes forward and looks to knock his opponents flat. A good example of this is when he faced Dennis Bermudez at UFC 189. In the fight, Dennis Bermudez landed really heavy shots, where Jeremy Stephens ate most of them and still kept pushing forward. In the third round, he was able to time a vicious knee as Dennis Bermudez came in to engage. He followed up with punches to get the TKO victory. Jeremy Stephens is as tough as they come and is always willing to take punishment in order to deliver the finishing blow. This was seen in his fight with Josh Emmett at UFC on Fox 28. In the fight, he ate some big shots from Josh Emmett very early on, but Jeremy Stephens was able to take it. In the second round, he was able to drop Josh Emmett with a huge left hook and followed up with punches to get the knockout victory. Although he has been through many rough patches of losses in his UFC career, Jeremy Stephens has shown that he is able to endure a heavy punch and definitely has one of the strongest chins in the UFC today. Number 6. Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum has solidified himself as a true contender in the middleweight division, with him just flatlining fighters with his powerful strikes. Although he's quite undersized for the weight class, this hasn't stopped him from pushing forward to seek the knockout. A good example of this is when he faced former UFC middleweight champion Michael Bisping at UFC Final 122. In the fight, Kelvin Gastelum was able to send Michael Bisping crashing to the canvas with a thunderous right hand to get the knockout victory in the first round. Even though he has been able to hold his own in the middleweight division, we hadn't seen Kelvin Gastelum in much trouble. In his most recent fight against Israel Adesanya at UFC 236, we saw him display true heart and determination, where he kept moving forward, disrupting Israel Adesanya's pace. We saw him catch Israel Adesanya many times in a crazy back and forth fight. However, in the 5th round, he took some very big shots, where in the last few minutes of the fight, Israel hit Kelvin with everything he had, dropping him, where Kelvin held on just long enough for the fight to be over. After the 5 rounds, Israel Adesanya was given the unanimous decision win to become the interim UFC middleweight champion. Kelvin Gastelum went through hell in the 5 rounds, and was determined not to be put away in the last few minutes of the fight. He persevered right till the end of the fight, showing that he will not give up whatsoever. He has certainly proved that he has the ability to take a punch, and has one of the strongest chins in the middleweight division. Number 5. Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega surged up the featherweight rankings with his impressive submission skills, which has helped him establish himself as a true contender in the weight class. In his fights, we have seen him attack for a submission finish, from the start of the fight till the end, where all he needs is an opening to pull off an electrifying win. A good example of this is when he faced Cub Swanson at UFC Final 123. In the 2nd round of the fight, he was able to wrap in a tight guillotine choke, where Cub Swanson had no choice but to tap out. He displayed his great stand-up skills when he stepped in on short notice to face Frankie Edgar at UFC 222. In the fight, he was able to knock him out with a vicious uppercut in the 1st round, securing himself a shot at the UFC featherweight champion Max Holloway at UFC 231. Up until this point, we had never seen Brian Ortega face any form of adversity, as he had finished all of his fights on his MMA record. At UFC 231, we saw Max Holloway outstrike Brian Ortega on the feet, where he took some of the most powerful shots, but still continued to fight on. Over the rounds, the punishment from Max Holloway piled up, but the straight-up toughness from Brian Ortega kept him in the fight, where the damage was evident on his face. At the end of the 4th round, the doctors called the fight off, where Max Holloway was awarded the TKO victory. This fight showed how tough Brian Ortega truly is, and never gave up pushing forward in the fight. Brian Ortega has earned so much respect from the MMA fans after UFC 231, where moving forward he will definitely be known for his strong chin. Number 4. Max Holloway. Max Holloway is the current UFC featherweight champion who has almost cleared out the division, using his well-rounded skills to remain as the champion for a while now. In his fights, he is known for his volume striking, where he has drowned some of the best featherweights in the world. A good example of this is when he defeated Jose Aldo, both at UFC 212 and at UFC 218. In both fights, we saw Max Holloway start off finding his range, and picked up the pace as the rounds progressed. In the 3rd round of both fights, he absolutely overwhelmed Jose Aldo with his pressure, and was able to get the TKO victory. In his 2nd title defense, we would see him face rising contender Brian Ortega at UFC 231. In the fight, Max Holloway would push forward and would absolutely punish Brian Ortega on the feet with his crisp striking, where in the 4th round, the doctor stopped the fight due to Brian Ortega looking like a bloody mess. He would next move up to the lightweight division and challenge top contender Dustin Poirier at UFC 236 for the interim UFC lightweight title. Max Holloway had put together an impressive 13-fight winning streak and was the betting favourite going into the fight. Up until this point, Max Holloway looked unstoppable, where we hadn't seen him in a very competitive fight for a very long time. At UFC 236, we saw Dustin Poirier crack Max Holloway right away, which had him on wobbly legs very early on in the fight. Max Holloway was able to remain composed, but Dustin Poirier kept winding up his punches, where he would land the more devastating shots over the rounds. We saw a great power difference between both fighters, where Dustin Poirier had the most significantly harder shots than Max Holloway. Max Holloway would come back in the late rounds, but Dustin Poirier would land the harder and bigger shots over the course of the 5 rounds to become the new interim UFC lightweight champion. Max Holloway showed true grit and determination in the fight, but it wasn't enough for him to get his hand raised. He took the most damage in this fight, more than he has in his other fights, but still it didn't stop him from moving forward. In this fight, Max Holloway proved that he can take a punch and showed that he has a granite chin. Number 3. Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero has been one of the elite middleweights for a while now. We have shown the true extent of his powers through his violent finishes of his opponents. We have seen in his fights that he remains patient until he sees the opportunity to explode and gets the electrifying win. A good example of this is when he faced Lyoto Machida at UFC Final 70. In the fight, he remained patient for the first 2 rounds, looking for the opportunities to engage. In the 3rd round, we saw him explode out of nowhere, securing the takedown and landed vicious elbows to get the TKO victory. In his his UFC career so far, he has put together a number of violent finishes on his resume. We have also seen him face adversity, where the fight could have gone the other way. In his fight with Tim Kennedy at UFC 178, we saw him get hurt very badly when Tim Kennedy was able to connect with a series of punches at the end of the second round. He was on the stool for more than he needed to, but continued to fight. In the third round, we saw him land a vicious right hand, dropping Tim Kennedy. He swarmed on him, throwing whatever he could to get the TKO finish. We also saw his toughness in his title fight at UFC 213. In the fight, he would come out aggressive using his wrestling, which would tire him out as the fight progressed. In the later rounds, we saw Robert Whittaker picked up the pace and landed some nasty blows, staggering Yoel Romero. He had enough in the tank to last all 5 rounds, losing the fight by unanimous decision. We saw in both the Tim Kennedy and the Robert Whittaker fights that he's able to handle getting hit with big shots and still has the willpower to remain in the fights. Yoel Romero has a ton of heart and will always push forward no matter what. Number 2. Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou is legit one of the most powerful punchers the UFC has ever seen, who over the years has made himself a top contender in the UFC's heavyweight division. In his fights, we have seen him sleep his opponents with a single strike in a very violent way. A good example of this is when he faced Alistair Overeem at UFC 218. In the fight, he was able to land the most violent uppercut you'll ever see in your life, which flattened Alistair Overeem immediately. This scary finish was enough for the UFC to grant him a title shot against then UFC heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic at UFC 220. Leading up to the fight, we had just witnessed Francis Ngannou just steamroll his opponents very quickly, and we didn't get to see how good he was in the other eras of the fight game. Many fans were predicting another signature knockout victory from Francis Ngannou, but that wasn't the case. In the fight, Francis Ngannou came out guns blazing, trying to rip Stipe Miocic's head off. This strategy would have a massive effect on him, as in the second and the third rounds, we saw Francis Ngannou slow down quite significantly, where he was moving very slowly and didn't have much pop to his punches. Stipe Miocic was able to pick up the pace and landed numerous heavy shots in which Francis Ngannou didn't have any response. Stipe Miocic would wind up his punches but wasn't able to put away the giant. He would repeatedly get taken down over the rounds, which further had an effect on his gas tank. At the end of the 5 rounds, the unanimous decision was given to Stipe Miocic, who would retain his title. In this fight, we saw how tough Francis Ngannou was and that he had the ability to take a punch. He took so many hard shots from Stipe Miocic, which would have finished any other heavyweight, but Francis Ngannou hung in there and was able to last the 5 rounds. Since that fight, Francis Ngannou has made major changes to his game and now looks much better than ever. This loss was a blessing in disguise, where he looks a lot scarier than he was before. Francis Ngannou has so much talent and determination, where he has definitely proved that he has the ability to take a punch. Number 1. Jon Jones. Jon Jones is the current UFC light heavyweight champion who has just about cleared out the light heavyweight division with ease using his well-rounded skills. In his fights, we have seen him just shut down his opponents, where he is able to dictate where the fight goes. This was seen when he faced Anthony Smith at UFC 235. In the fight, he didn't give Anthony Smith a chance to breathe, where he kept the same pressure from start to finish, winning the fight by unanimous decision. In his UFC career, we have seen him just run through his opponents quite easily, where we haven't seen him in any difficulty whatsoever. The only time he saw adversity was when he faced Alexander Gustafsson in the first fight at UFC 165. In the fight, he was taken down for the first time in his UFC career and ate some very heavy shots. He displayed great toughness in the fight, where he would dig deep and come back in the later rounds, throwing whatever he had in the tank. It was enough for him to win the fight by unanimous decision. Over the years, he has fought many dangerous strikers who weren't able to catch him. These include Quinton Rampage Jackson, Mauricio Shogun Rua, Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort, and Glover Teixeira. Jon Jones has never been finished in his MMA career so far, and definitely deserves a spot on this list. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please make sure you hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell to be notified when we post videos. So that was my list of the 10 Granite chins in the UFC 2019. Let me know your honorable mentions in the comment section below. And also check out my last video where I talk about the 10 heaviest hitters in the UFC 2019. And my other video where I talk about the 10 fights to make after UFC 236, Holloway vs Poirier 2. Also, if you guys want to watch the fights for free this weekend, sign up to the ESPN Plus 7-day free trial using the link in the description below. I appreciate your support and I'll catch you guys next time.